I'm back. Thank you all for coming around. Time for another stream. Let's see. What does the thumbnail say? It says something about now is not a good time for wishful thinking. What I'm going to talk about today is it's not climate denial, but it is wishful thinking. These are people who have accepted that climate change is real, not a hoax. They understand the science behind it. They understand the data that points to the situation. They understand the scientific papers. They follow the data and where it's pointing and all these kinds of things. So these are scientists. They're science communicators, people that call themselves climate activists or climate action advocates or a bunch of other things. And people like myself, you might imagine. I'm on here communicating climate science, so I'm in that bunch, right? I know these folks. I know what they think. I know what they want. They're wrong, and what they want is impossible. Doesn't mean I don't like them. It doesn't mean they're evil. It doesn't even mean that they're stupid. What they are is they're frightened. We have crossed over from the days of Al Gore when we could still be optimistic. Go back and watch his Inconvenient Truth. Go back and watch his videos. He did a movie, didn't he? Inconvenient Truth. And you'll recognize how optimistic he was. Really, really over the top optimistic. Fast forward 30 years and the bloom is off the rose. It's really hard to be optimistic these days. I understand that. I'm going to talk about, I actually have some notes here. Where are my notes? I'm going to have a script today. There they are. I have my notes. So I'll be looking over here like a dork while I read through some of these notes. I don't think this will take very long. Probably take an hour. If you're in this space and you're following the problems with climate change, which I call global heating because that's the physics behind everything, then you may have even heard some of these things and you may even think these are great ideas because, again, these are coming from people who have accepted the science, accepted the truth, if you like, accepted the evidence at the very least, and are now on the other side of the street trying to change things and make the world better for humans and animals and other living things. So, a very laudable approach. Again, they're wrong. They're just wrong. And I wish I could say that they were not wrong. I wish I could say that there was something that could be done about along the lines of what they want. I wish what they want could be done. And that's what makes them wrong. It can't be done. Not because I say so, but because physics says so. Physics and a couple of other things like, politics, budgets, war. Now those are all human behavior. But human behavior may as well be physics, right? Humans do a certain thing. They only do the thing. And even when they don't want to do the thing, they still do the thing. And that's what this video is going to be about. Even the people who want to do things differently are still going to do the thing. And I see that. I don't know why that is. But let me talk about their points. Let me talk about all the solutions being proposed. Let me stick to my notes. The scientific and advocacy communities are now terrified of runaway hothouse Earth. This is a very real threat, and according to the science, may already be unavoidable. Runaway hothouse Earth. What does that mean? Anywhere from 5 degrees C to 10 degrees C above a pre-industrial baseline. 25 degrees Fahrenheit, if you rather. Hot. Really hot. Very hot. Probably, absolutely too hot for human civilization, period. Hands down, couldn't pull it off. Whatever civilization is, whatever that is, you figure it out. I don't have to explain that to you. Whatever that thing is, civilization is not possible under hothouse Earth. Also impossible under hothouse Earth may be any form of human life because of the conditions that we require to survive. Now, I don't buy that. It is offered as a possibility that humans may go extinct. I don't think so. This is a big planet. We are really resilient. And I think that there's always going to be some place for some of us. And so human life will continue. That's not really the issue. But not with civilization, not as we know it now. And this has people terrified. The people who are in denial are not worried about that. Let's be very clear on that. The people who are in denial about climate change and global heating don't see any threats. The people who see the threat, the people who are worried, the people in denial are not worried. They just laugh and move on. The people who are worried about us and our civilization and our prospects for the future are the people who accept the science, you see. And once you accept the science and you become, well, maybe gradually, but eventually terrified, then you start playing this game. What do we have to do? How are we going to do it? Can we save ourselves? How are we going to save ourselves? Let's have some proposals. Let's put some stuff on the table. Let's play around with this. Let's brainstorm, okay? The people in denial are not brainstorming. They're not braining anything. It's the people who accept the science who are having a problem. And I understand that. I probably have less of a problem than my peers in this space. Only because I have gone through all the levels of grief and I have come to acceptance. I'm at the end of that road already. I have seen the data. I accept the data. I understand where the data is pointing to, and I must accept that. I must accept it. That's my requirement as an intellectual working in science. When the science points to something, and I see that, then that's the thing. That's the thing. Now, the people I like, okay, what stimulated all this? I was listening to Climate Emergency Forum. It's on YouTube. And they always have a couple of people on, Peter Carter, Paul Beckwith, and there's usually a guest sometimes, or they talk about a paper. And in which case the paper is like the guest, right? And so they talk about these things, but they always end up in a good-hearted way, trying to be helpful, coming around to, well, what do we do next? What do we do now? What is the science telling us to do? What must we do if we accept the science? And that put me here. So I'm going to trot out. This is going to be mean. This is going to be savage. This is going to be me being an absolute raging savage. But you are here for me to do that, right? Right. Well, let's go. So, before I do that, let me share my other savage thing I did. The novel that I wrote. It was 100 Days, an End of Civilization novel, sort of a user's manual for the end of the world, which we are now pretty much officially in the early days of. In fact, I did I'll have to go back and link it in the description, or maybe link it on the end card. I did a reading from my book, this book right here, of the first, it was the preface, day 0, and then the first 10 days. It was practice, because I want to make an audiobook. I've ordered, and I'm not going to use this microphone, certainly not this studio. I ordered a microphone, a proper microphone, and I'm going to use my basement. I'm going to set up a studio. Then I'm going to do an audiobook. And it's not complicated, but you have to do it. Oh, and I have to practice. So I did a reading to practice and to realize that this microphone is not what I want to use. The real microphone is going to be delivered today. So I did a reading for practice. But anyway, I read from the preface and day 0, which is what's happening today in the news. What are we doing? War in Iran, right? Well, that's all day zero. So you may want to go back. I promise. I'll edit this video. I'll edit the description. You may want to go back and watch that that presentation, because that was me doing a reading, and that's all. I was totally on script. I was reading a book. So back to the current topic. I am going to go through, what do I have here? 3, 6, 9, 14, 15. There's like 16 bullet points here. 16 bullet points. They're not numbered. Should I number them? Okay. I'll try to number them so that you know when I'm transitioning. All the points I'm about to give you, 16 or so, are talking points given by people who accept the challenges of climate change and global heating. They accept the science. They accept the everything. These are not people in denial. But they're wrong. They're wrong. And as I give these solutions that are being offered to the real problem, I will try and point out why they're wrong. I'm not pointing out that they're wrong just to be mean or to be contrarian. If they were correct, I would say these are correct and we should do these things. We can do all these things. I have no objection to doing the things. What makes them wrong is they're not going to solve the problem. The problem is real. Therefore, we need to solve the problem. Now, the problem, as I've often said on here, is a wicked problem. It admits of no solution. And when I get to the end of this list of 15 or 16 things, that's what I'm going to say again. None of these are a solution. And by the time I've presented them all and explained why they are not, then you'll probably come down on the same side. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll think I'm full of shit. That's fine too. That's okay. We're kind of all on the same side of the street. All I'm trying to point out is these are not solutions. The problem is real. These are not solutions. The problem is real. We need to accept that it's real. We need to move on. And we can't be pretending to understand the solution. There is a solution. Oh, there is no solution. But there's a thing that we must do. I'll get to that at the end. Because it will be more palatable to you. It will make more sense to you after I go through all this. I don't want to call it bullshit, because it's not. We can do all these things. They're not the solution, though they are presented that way. All right. I'm sorry. Let's just do this, shall we? All right. Number 1, renewable energy. So what is renewable energy? Solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, whatever. A bunch of stuff. Okay. It's not a solution. Because for one thing, renewable energy does not mean energy. It means electricity. Everything I just mentioned generates electricity. Electricity usage is energy, and it is part of our energy mix. But electricity consumption is 20% of our energy mix. The other 80% is fossil fuels. We just burn them as fuels in motors or in turbines to make sometimes electricity, right? So renewable energy, making your electricity in a different way, is fine, but it's only the electricity part. The other part is still there. And I saw a video, I was watching something last night, a couple of guys talking about it. And the guy was talking about electricity and solar panels and wind as if that was like everything. It's a thing, but it's 20% of the thing. The rest of it is still the thing with the fossil fuels. Also, renewable energy, it has to be manufactured. And solar panels are manufactured using fossil fuels. Wind turbines are manufactured and installed and maintained and everything else using fossil fuels. Also, renewable energy electricity is put onto a grid. Now, I don't have a grid here. I have solar panels. I don't have a grid. But mostly, renewable energy goes onto the electrical grid. The electrical grid is manufactured. It's maintained. It's built. It's upgraded. And all that process involves fossil fuels, trucks and cranes and all this, and manufacturing processes for every single part of the grid, including the solar panels and the wind turbines. All that has to be manufactured. And all that manufacturing base is kept moving using fossil fuels. It just is. And talking about renewable energy does a thing that I'm going to refer to in every single one of these points. It promotes BAU, business as usual. It doesn't say we have to do things differently. Renewable energy doesn't force you to think about your carbon footprint. The renewable energy doesn't think about how you live your life. You just got renewable energy, you have all the electricity you want, you do what you want with it, and you don't change anything. And this is a major criticism, that all these solutions, and this my head explodes when I see people doing this. All these solutions don't solve the problem of global heating. They do encourage business as usual. And guess what business wants? Business wants business as usual. The driving, the flying, the moving the goods, the shopping at the market, the jobs, the credit card swipes, the modern agriculture, the modern medicine, the modern everything. That's what business wants. Now, we like those things. Those things were all made possible using fossil fuels. And if they can distract you away from worrying about the fossil fuel part by giving you the renewable energy thing, then you'll accept business as usual. Business as usual is the problem. We need it to survive. We need it to have food and clothing and shelter and water and electricity and medicines and education and all the other transportation, all of it. We need the business as usual. The business as usual is going to kill us all. That's the problem. They also promote, second point, energy efficiency. Now, energy efficiency, you use less energy, but you're still using energy. So even though you're using less material from the electrical grid, there still has to be an electrical grid, and it has to work. And if it's not working, somebody has to come out with a truck or 15 trucks, as happened in front of my house recently. They have to come out with 15 trucks and fix it. So you're saving energy, but the infrastructure has to be maintained at 100%. You reduce your energy consumption, probably electricity in this case, by 5%, 10%. The grid has to be maintained at 100%. There's also a thing called Jevons paradox. He came up with this back in the coal age, steam age, the age of steam. And he noticed that when you became more efficient at mining coal, or at even burning coal, when you became more efficient at burning coal, better engines, right, better steam engines, that did not reduce coal consumption. Being more efficient with coal consumption did not reduce coal consumption. It simply made more coal available for other uses. So it got burned for other purposes. Maybe you are burning less coal in your steam engine or your factory or your whatever, but that means there's more cheap coal available for someone to build another factory right next door and manufacture something else. Yes, Jevons paradox. So conservation of a resource does not lead to, never leads to reduction in the consumption of the resource. In fact, the consumption of the resource might even go up. If you're consuming less coal to manufacture textiles, then textiles become cheaper. And when textiles become cheaper, then more people want to manufacture them because they can make more money. All of a sudden, instead of having one textile plant running X amount of coal and making expensive textiles, you have 10 textile plants running 10 times as much coal to make something that's 1/10 the price, because there's more consumption of it when it gets cheap. So this is what efficiency does. Efficiency does not solve your problem. Efficiency leaves the problem in place and might even make the problem worse. And that is what we have witnessed over 150 years of industrialization. Everything has gotten worse. Also, energy efficiency, once again, contributes to business as usual. It doesn't change how people do things. They're just a bit more efficient at it. Making automobiles more gas efficient didn't result in less gas being burned. We burn more gasoline now than we ever dreamed of. It also didn't mean fewer cars on the freeway. There's more cars on the freeway. The freeways are getting bigger every day. It doesn't mean that people drove fewer miles. It means people, because the car was so efficient, people drove more miles, and so on. And a third option is grid modernization. If the energy grid, meaning the electrical grid, is inefficient, then maybe we can save some energy, right, by upgrading it, making it more efficient. But once again, that's Jevons paradox. If you make it more efficient and the price of energy of electricity goes down as a result because you're wasting less of it, then people will see the reduction in electricity costs and they'll find more ways to use it. Now, there's nothing wrong with efficiency. There's nothing wrong with renewable energy. There's nothing wrong with modernizing the grid. But it doesn't solve the problem. Yes, do those things. But don't present those as solutions to global heating, because they're not. 4. EVs, electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, let me point out, don't grow on trees. And they don't pop out of the ground. They're manufactured, and so you can have a plant that was manufacturing gasoline-powered cars or diesel-powered cars, and then convert it to the same plant manufacturing electrical vehicles. Nothing changes. Oh, but the electrical vehicles themselves don't consume fossil fuels. Nope, they consume electricity. Where's that coming from? Now, unless you have solar panels on your house and a battery storage to charge your vehicle when you come home at night, because there won't be any electricity at night from the sun, unless you have all that worked out, then you don't know where your electricity is coming from. And in most places, it comes from some combination of coal and natural gas, both of which are fossil fuels. Maybe it's more efficient, but once again, Jevons paradox. If you're not consuming it, then it's left on the table, someone else comes along and they consume it. And EVs promote business as usual. Business as usual in this case is there's a road out there. You're going to be driving on that road. That road has to be built and maintained. There's a traffic intersection. There's traffic lights. Those lights have to be powered by somebody. They have to be installed and maintained. And of course, if the power ever goes down, then you have monumental traffic congestion, correct? Also, your EV on the freeway is still contributing to traffic. And if everyone on the freeway is driving an EV, the freeways are still congested. So we need more lanes, and we need more freeways, and we need more off-ramps, and we need more everything else. Your EV doesn't solve the problem with freeways because you're using the freeways. Your EV doesn't solve the problem of asphalt because you drive on asphalt, and you still want someone to come out and patch the holes at night at 3 o'clock in the morning with a big diesel truck and asphalt. There may be compelling reasons to drive an EV. Maybe there's less tailpipe pollution. Well, there's none, of course. Less is actually zero. But the electricity that you're using is being generated somewhere, and there's a smokestack emission to accommodate that. Also, electric vehicles are putting a unique and really unanticipated strain on the grid, right? We talked about grid modernization a second ago. Yeah, now you're going to have to modernize the grid because now this, it's not just households with a coffee maker, right? Lighting, a refrigerator. Now someone's driving in the evening. Of course, they're all driving in at the same time, the end of the day, and they're plugging in their EV all at the same time, all for the same reason. And you have this enormous drag. There's a lot of energy in gasoline. And when we were burning gasoline to shuttle ourselves up and down the freeway, that was not a drain on the utility grid. When we stopped burning gasoline, we still needed that energy to move a car that still weighs 3 tons. So we take it from the grid now. And the grid is not ready for that. We haven't changed anything. This is business as usual. We're just taking our energy off of a wire instead of off of a fuel pump. We still need a lot of energy. The car still weighs 3 tons. You're still going uphill. You're still accelerating. You're still in traffic. You're still doing all the things. You're still hauling yourself, plus your groceries, plus the car itself, and all this stuff still requires energy. It's all BAU. It's all business as usual. Okay, how about public transit? Well, public transit, it doesn't. It has to be manufactured just like an EV. The factory that puts out the EVs and the factory that puts out a Ford truck and a factory that puts out a sedan, right next to it there's another factory that builds buses. Both factories are the same. They require fossil fuels to operate. The employees and all the parts and all the materials come and go to the factory using fossil fuels. There's a truck. There's a train. There's a cargo ship, right? Somewhere there's a manufacturing facility. Maybe it's in China. Maybe it's in Taiwan. Doesn't matter. Somebody is manufacturing all these parts, and then they're shipping all these parts. They end up at this factory, and then thing is assembled. Well, if it's a personal vehicle, that's one thing that rolls out. If it's a bus, then that's another thing that rolls out. But it still has a manufacturing base. It's all fossil fuel. It's all business as usual. You're still manufacturing a solution. It just looks a little different. Works a little different. Doesn't mean you can't have public transit. I'm just saying, but public transit and electric vehicle is business as usual. It's not a solution. It's a thing. You may justify it somehow, but it's business as usual. It's just a different thing. Biofuels. Maybe you don't want an electric vehicle, but you're still conscious of your consumption of fossil fuels. So you're going to start burning a biofuel. Corn oil, peanut oil, something like that, can be converted into diesel. You can burn biofuels in electrical power plants. Well, actually, another biofuel you can burn is scrap wood chips. You go into a forest, you cut down all the trees, you chip them up, you make them into pellets, you ship them to the power plant, they burn them in the incinerator, they take the heat, they boil the water, they take the steam, they turn the turbine. That's a biofuel. Now, of course, you've cut down a forest to do that, but for some people, that's acceptable. That's an acceptable sacrifice because now their electricity was generated using a biofuel. Or you could have a field of corn, and you take the corn oil and you turn it into diesel, and that's a biofuel. Well, you're starting to see the problem here, right? Where'd that corn come from? Well, that's modern agriculture. And they're using irrigation water and fertilizers and great big combine harvesters. And normally that corn would go onto the market as food, but instead it's going onto the market as diesel, corn oil, or as ethanol to stretch out your gasoline a little bit. Your E95 alcohol gasoline. The farming is all business as usual. The driving is all business as usual. Your biofuel doesn't mean you don't need asphalt. It doesn't mean you don't need intersection lights. It doesn't mean you don't need law enforcement. Your biofuel is just business as usual. It's just that it's one step removed. They had to burn diesel, and they had to buy fertilizer, and they had to transport water to make the biofuel. Now, you weren't driving that combine harvester to work. You weren't unloading that nitrogen-based fertilizer that came from Kuwait, right? On a cargo ship. You didn't have to unload that. You didn't do any of those things. You just waited for them to grow the corn and process the oil out of the corn and turn it into diesel, and then you put it in your truck. So you didn't participate in any of that other stuff. All that other stuff is business as usual. Plus, your truck had to still be manufactured. It's a diesel. It's just using a different fuel. It's all BAU. And then there's these things that are, I'm a biologist, so I kind of understand what the problems are with these. I understand the necessity to renew our forests, to do regenerative agriculture, to do coastal protection. And these are all feel-good things. Oh, and they want to protect the Great Coral Reef off of Australia, and they want to prevent animal extinctions, and all these other things. Oh, these are all feel-good, fuzzy, feel-great things. And I'm a biologist, and I'm in favor of them. Sure, go ahead. You want to stop cutting down forests? Fine. Don't cut down the forests. You want to prevent animals from going extinct? Okay, fine, do it. I mean, we'll see how far you get. That's an aspirational goal. Anything wrong with the aspirational goal of stopping the deforestation and preserving animals from extinction? Is anything wrong with that? No. Am I clear on that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. Does it solve our problem with global heating and climate change? No. Let me explain why. This is where we get into this concept of carbon neutral. Carbon neutral. How do forests grow? Forests grow plants by removing CO2 from the atmosphere and making plant tissues from it. The plant gets bigger as it removes more CO2 from the atmosphere. Amazing. Wow, that was easy. You mean you plant a seed, and as that plant gets bigger and bigger, it removes more CO2 from the atmosphere? Amazing. No reason not to do that. Correct. You want to plant forests, that's fine. Now, where you're planting forests is a place where a forest used to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to support forests. You can't plant forests in a desert. That would be cool if you could do that, but you can't. So instead, you're going to a place where a forest used to be, that the forest was clear cut or it burned down in a fire, or people cut it for firewood or for lumber or whatever. So you're saying, wow, here's this mountain. It's got no forest. I see the stumps. There were trees here once. I see the stumps. We need trees to come back here. So you get out there and you plant all these little saplings, you do all this work, and you get a forest back. What have you accomplished? Well, we're removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Yes, that's right. But what are you removing? You're removing the CO2 that was put into the atmosphere by the trees that were originally there. You cut those trees down, you chipped them up, you took them to a power plant or a lumber yard or whatever, and then that CO2 was eventually released into the atmosphere because the tree is gone. It gets burned, it rots, it gets thrown in the landfill, whatever. The CO2 gets released into the atmosphere. Then you come along and you plant a tree and you remove that CO2 from the atmosphere again. So what have you accomplished? You reversed a process that humans instigated in the first place. Because you didn't plant trees where trees have never been. You did not plant trees on the surface of the ocean. You did not plant trees on Mars. You did not plant trees in the desert. You did not plant trees on the tops of mountains that are covered with snow. You did not go to any place that trees have never been and planted trees and accomplished something. You simply went to a place where trees used to be, planted the trees back, and thought you did something. You did do something. But what you did was you reversed something that someone else, not you, did 100 years ago. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's not a solution to the problem. It's carbon neutral. The carbon you're removing was put there in the first place by clearing the land of the trees that you are now replacing. Regenerative agriculture, this is a good thing. Fine. Definitely, absolutely do that. Regenerative agriculture, there's all kinds of processes. You're returning carbon to the soil. You're growing agriculture, in ways that don't use a lot of fossil fuels. But again, anything you do with plants and animals is carbon neutral. That's biology. You're doing a good thing, but it's not a solution to the problem of burning fossil fuels. It's simply a thing you can do that has benefits. It's not a solution to the problem of global heating caused by fossil fuel consumption. You'll think it is, but it's not. Oh, but trillions of tons of carbon can be put into the soil. All you're doing is replacing the carbon that other types of agriculture removed. And when they removed that carbon, where did it go? It went into the atmosphere. So when you come along later and plant your plants differently and you're putting carbon back into the soil, where's it coming from? The atmosphere. But why did it get there in the first place? Because someone destroyed the soil. So when you're going to regenerate the soil and put the carbon back, that's carbon that used to be in the soil before. When someone came along who was not doing regen agriculture, they destroyed the soil, put the carbon back in the atmosphere, and all you're doing is removing it. You're reversing something that someone not you did 100 years ago. Fine, please do. It's not going to solve our problem. You're just reversing part of the problem that somebody else accomplished earlier. And once again, some of this contributes to business as usual. So if you're doing local regenerative agriculture and you're transporting your food results a block to a market, if you're transporting it a mile to a market, then that kind of is okay. But if you're doing regenerative agriculture in an agricultural area that's 500 miles from any place where people live and consume food, then what are you doing? You're taking your ag produce, you're putting it in a diesel truck probably, you're driving it 500 miles to a market, and the market is what? It's a modern supermarket. It has air conditioning, it has lighting, it has employees. And the employees, how do they get to work? They drive a car, and there's a big parking lot full of employee vehicles, and all this grid, and all this gasoline, and all this asphalt, and all these traffic controls, and all these vehicles, and all this back and forth. Yes, your agriculture is fine. There's nothing wrong with your agriculture, but it's part of business as usual. And there you go. It's a good thing to do. It doesn't solve the problem, because the problem is business as usual. Coastal protection. We're now up to 9. Coastal protection. please, definitely protect your coasts, protect the marshes, restore the marshes, and all this kind of stuff is fine. Global heating proceeds anyway, because that wasn't the problem. Yes, it's a good thing to do. Definitely do it, but it's not the problem. It's a problem. It's not the problem. And what happens when this problem, global heating, climate change, proceeds? Well, it's going to melt a lot of ice. And when it melts a lot of ice, sea level is going to rise. And when the sea level rises, it's going to inundate the coastal areas. And all the places where you were out there and you and your friends were very busy replanting the coast and protecting the coasts and putting in the mangroves and putting in the seagrass and doing all the protections and passing all the laws and doing all the things, well, then sea level comes along and now it's under 20 feet of water. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it doesn't solve the problem. In fact, the problem, having been not solved, inundates your solution to a problem, a different problem. Our coastal areas are being eroded. We've lost our coastal mangroves and we lost our coastal estuaries. I'm a biologist. I know all about this stuff. You don't have to convince me. Yes, definitely do it. But you have to stop sea level rise. And if you're not doing that, if you're not stopping sea level rise, then all your work is going to be underwater. You see? Do the thing, understanding that in 15, 20, 30 years, it's all going to be underwater. Are you okay with that? Well, then do the thing. And understand that when you come back 30 years later, it's all going to be underwater. Some of this stuff is like feel good. I feel good. I'm driving to the coast and I see the coastal erosion, and I'm surfing and I see the coastal erosion, and I will watch the video where the sea level was rising and it was destroying the mangroves, or it was destroying the estuaries or whatever else. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to participate in making this better. And you come home and you're tired and you feel great about yourself, and you sit down, you have you have a beer and you watch TV or whatever, and you feel good. You feel good. And if you had any anxieties about climate change and global heating, maybe you helped dissipate those anxieties because you did something good. You did something for the planet. Yay. Rah, rah. Fine, do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's not a solution. It just makes you feel better. These are aspirational goals. You aspire to feeling better. Fine, feel better. Well, actually... I mean, if I was to be savage about it, I mean, what would I say to that? Oh, you feel good? You were out there replanting the wetlands. You were out there, measuring the mangroves and measuring sea level rise and trying to protect the mangroves and trying to protect the estuaries. You're doing all that. You feel good? You shouldn't feel good. You should be terrified. Global heating didn't go away. And sea level rise is still a thing. And hot house Earth is right there on the horizon. What, 2 years away? 3 years? 5? You should not feel great. You should be terrified. If you're doing something that makes you feel good so that you can walk away from the problem, then that's failure. You should be afraid. You should be focused on the problem rather than engaging in feel-good solutions. Because I don't want you to feel good. I want you to feel bad. I want you to be scared. I want you to be horrified at what's happening. I want you to stop driving your fucking car. To start. And then when you get to real scientists, and they understand that all that stuff above is a non-starter. I understand it. I'm a scientist and an engineer. I understand why these things don't work. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, grid modernization, EVs, public transit, biofuels, reforestation, regenerative ag, coastal protection. That's fine. Go ahead. It's not going to save you. I'm a scientist and an engineer. Yeah, go ahead and do those things. You're going to die anyway. And so when scientists realize that, okay, that's all, that's a long list, fine, then they start coming up with actual solutions, what they think are actual solutions. And I've got 7 here. And there's a lot more. This is just the 7 I could come up with in 5 minutes of noodling over this, okay? The 7 solutions that scientists and engineers propose. Oh, and sometimes politicians if they've been talking to the right people. Al Gore, for example, he would love all this stuff. This was in his original presentation, An Inconvenient Truth. He was all over this stuff. And some of this stuff is new, though, so he would be all over it now, but he wasn't all over it in 1990 whatever when he was first talking about this, because a lot of this is new. I'm going to list the 7 I have here. There's probably 7 more I didn't even bother to put in, but this is representative, okay? So here are the 7, and then I'll talk about each one individually, as I just did above. Emissions reductions, carbon dioxide emissions reductions, carbon capture and sequestration, decarbonizing industry, sulfate injection, solar radiation management, SRM, refreezing the Arctic, marine cloud brightening. So that's just 7 things I just pulled out of my head. I've been hearing a lot about these things recently. Real scientists, real engineers, real people who accept the real problem of climate change and global heating. This is the stuff they talk about all the time. It makes me sick. Makes me want to vomit. This is sickening. These people have lost their minds. They've lost their minds with grief. They've lost their minds with dread. They've lost their minds with horror at what we have done and what we continue to do. But they've lost their minds. They've lost their minds. Well, that's too bad. That's sad. Because when they're talking about this stuff, which I will now go into in detail because I'm a fucking savage, they're not talking about the real thing, the real solution, the actual thing we have to do, which I will get to at the end. Stay tuned. Oh, you're not going to like it. Oh, you are not going to like it, but you're going to hear it anyway, all right? Let's go through these 7. Emissions reductions. Okay. No one even knows what that means. Anytime they say emissions reductions, you have to kind of fill in with carbon dioxide emission reductions. You have to kind of fill that in because they won't say that part. They just say emission reductions. And everyone's like, oh, that sounds great. That actually harkens back to the 60s and the 70s when emission reductions meant less pollution, less ground level ozone, nitrous oxide, smog, things like that. We were talking about cars and tailpipe emissions. And therefore, we wanted to do emission reductions, more efficient engines, emission controls coming out of engines, engine monitoring, better fuels. And as a result, hey, it worked. Cities, all around America and even in the world, that the air was just horrendous. You couldn't breathe the air. Okay, now the air is not so bad because we engaged in tailpipe emission reductions. But that word then entered our vocabulary, emissions reductions. And now they're applying it to, well, they won't say carbon emission reductions. They just say emission reductions because that's what people have been trained to think about. Oh, you mean pollution? Oh, yeah, emission reductions. That's a good idea. Emissions reductions. That's great. Actually, it's CO2 emissions reductions, which they don't say that because you can't reduce CO2 emissions. You can't do it. There's no way to do it because you can't capture it. You can't do anything with CO2 emissions. It's invisible. It has no odor, and it's not even considered a pollutant. There's no way to capture it. It's not reactive. CO2, carbon dioxide, is actually used as a preservative. It doesn't react chemically with anything. Plus, a lot of our sources of carbon dioxide emissions, let's give it the proper name, are mobile. They're mobile sources. Cars, trucks, boats, airplanes, tanks, missiles, right? What, are you going to put a big hose on the back of a tank as it goes into war? You're going to capture those emissions? You're going to reduce those emissions? What are you talking about? You're not going to do that. No one's going to do that. It promotes business as usual when you talk about emissions reductions because no one understands what to do. Also, if you were going to stop emissions reductions, you'd have to do it across the entire planet. That means treaties. And for all of these 7 things, when I say BAU, there's also an implication that you're going to have to violate business as usual globally. Globally. That means treaties. That means the Paris Climate Accords for every single thing you ever plan to do. Everybody has to sign on. Everybody has to agree it's important, and everybody has to agree that they're going to solve it. And if they don't, you've accomplished nothing. If everybody on the planet agreed to drive EVs, then maybe we've accomplished something. But so long as that's not the case, and I mean every single one of them, we still need fuel stations, fuel trucks, refineries. Until everyone is driving an EV, we still have to have service stations. Business as usual. The chance of getting everyone to drive an EV, or ride a bicycle if you prefer, is zero. Zero. They're not going to do it. You would also have to shut down the airline industry. You can't do emissions reductions in the airline industry. They're up in the sky. How are you going to do this? You'd have to shut that down completely. The cargo ships plying the oceans, carrying goods back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. What are you going to do with those? You have to have that stop. They have to stop. It's not going to happen. Emissions reductions is the biggest bugaboo you're going to find in the climate space. Everybody talks about it. They never tell you what it means, and they never, ever, ever express that as a technology or a technique. It's always just thrown out there. Emissions reductions. Okay, moving on. Back to sports. Okay, it's always just throw it out there. That solves our problem. Everybody goes, oh yeah, that sounds great. Nobody has any idea what it means or how to implement it. Next, carbon capture and sequestration. This is what have to be technology. This will have to be technology. There are very few places where you, again, stationary sources, power plants, manufacturing, where there's a source of carbon dioxide coming out of a chimney that you could just capture it at the chimney and right there sequester it into the ground or into tanks or do something else with it. Very few places like that. Fine, go ahead. Find a place where you can capture the carbon emissions and put them into an underground cavern and convince me that it's not going to find a way out. Okay, fine, but whatever. Just do it. Do it. But again, it doesn't do anything for mobile sources. It doesn't do anything for transportation or anything else. There's another thing called carbon capture and removal, where they, and again, this is more technology. No one knows what they can come up with it and they can do pilot projects, but for some reason the pilot projects never become big projects. What they want to do is they want to do direct air capture. It's called DAC. They want to direct air capture where they have big fans that move the air through a chemical process. And the chemical process strips out the CO2, preferentially. There's some chemical that goes on, some chemistry that goes on. Then they take that captured CO2 in that fluid or whatever it is, and they bury it, they put it in tanks, they put it underground, they do something. Yes, you can do that. There is chemistry for doing that. And you can run the fans and electricity and the whole thing. You can manufacture all this stuff, manufacture the chemicals, move the chemicals around, capture the CO2, move the captured CO2 around, put it someplace, and you can do that on a pilot basis. And yeah, it works. And since it's pulling carbon dioxide directly out of the air, direct air capture, right? Because it's pulling carbon dioxide directly out of the air, it doesn't matter where the carbon dioxide came from. It could have come from a mobile source. It could have come from China, but now I'm in, California and I'm doing direct air capture, and it doesn't matter where the carbon dioxide came from. Could have come from China, could have come from Singapore, could have come from Russia, it doesn't matter. I'm pulling out of the air. The air goes everywhere, collects all the carbon dioxide, comes to me, and I pull it out. Well, you don't see huge efforts to do this anywhere on the planet. There are pilot projects, and that's it. And the reason why is because it's expensive. And also, it generates a waste product. The chemistry that you use to capture the carbon dioxide is now a waste product. Maybe you can strip the carbon dioxide out of it and then reuse the chemicals, the chemistry, but that's just more chemistry. And all of this requires electricity. And all of this requires investment. And all of this requires some place where you build a great big, huge manufacturing facility for carbon capture right out of the air. And all of this requires innovation. All of this requires investment. Is it going to happen? Well, it could. Hasn't happened yet. But people will talk about direct air capture. They'll talk about, well, we can't do carbon capture and sequestration because not everything is a chimney. So we're going to direct air capture instead, or we'll do both. Except right now we're doing neither, except in pilot projects. Very, very tiny projects. We release something like 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. 30 billion tons. You have to capture 30 billion tons of this stuff. Tons with a T. That's real weight, folks. 30 billion tons. I don't know how much by volume that is, but let's say you turn the carbon dioxide that you captured into solid bricks, like bicarbonate or something like that, right? Limestone, whatever you wanted to turn it into, through some chemical process, and who knows how involved that would be, but you'd have a brick. So you'd have what, 30,000 tons of bricks? 30 billion tons of bricks? What are you going to do with those? Build pyramids everywhere? 30 billion tons of bricks? I did a calculation once. How much does the Great Pyramid in Giza weigh? Okay, that's a weight. It's like 7 million tons. Okay, how many Great Pyramids of Giza would you have to create every year out of bricks made from CO2? However you're doing that. Let's just jump over that. Someone did that. Came up with bricks. Here they are. I got a brick of CO2. Imagine that, okay? How many pyramids of Giza weighing 7 million tons would you have to build annually to deal with 30 billion tons of CO2? And it was something like, it's in the thousands. Thousands of pyramids of Giza annually, just to deal with annual emissions from fossil fuel consumptions. Thousands of pyramids of Giza made of bricks, made of carbon dioxide pulled out of the atmosphere. That's how much you have to pull out of the atmosphere annually just to break even. And not even dealing with carbon emissions in the past. Just every year, annually, you'd have to make thousands of pyramids of Giza stacked high of these bricks of CO2 that you captured. It's not going to happen. It defies physics. It's not going to happen. Stop talking about it. Decarbonizing industry. So carbon is used in various industries. Of course, it's derivative of coal, oil, and natural gas. Could you decarbonize those industries? Well, yeah, maybe, but those are still industries. They're still there. What are they making that you're getting the carbon out of? Are they making automobiles? Are they making tractors? Well, automobiles still need roads. They still need freeways. If they're electric vehicles, they still need electricity. And if they run on conventional fuels, then those automobiles that you just made with a decarbonized process, whatever that means, still need fuel. That comes from fossil fuels. So decarbonizing an industry still leaves an industry in place. And that industry represents business as usual. And business as usual is what's causing all the problems. We never stop doing business. Oh, we can't stop doing business, jobs, growth, GDP. Fine. Think whatever you like, I guess. Yeah, we keep doing business as usual. How do you decarbonize an industry? I don't even know. Hey, you know what? If it was easy, they would have done it. And they haven't. So it isn't. Sulfate injection. So this is a form of solar radiation management, which is a bigger category. But I'll mention it in particular because people are talking about doing it. They're talking about doing sulfate injections. Back in 2021, there was treaties passed that removed sulfur from the fuels used by cargo ships. So these big container ships, right, that go back and forth between China and Europe and China and the U.S., they were out in the oceans using up all this fuel and emitting sulfates into the atmosphere. Well, sulfates are, no, they're not toxic, but they're harmful to the environment. So, oh, and by the way, when these ships got to port, there were all kinds of problems with the sulfate emissions from the ships sitting in port. They have to run their engines all the time because the engines are generating electricity. on the ship that's necessary for using all the equipment. Like if it's a cargo ship, then it has to unload cargo. It has to have lighting, hydraulic fluids, the whole thing. So electricity for lighting and whatever. So they have to run the engines. They have to idle the engines. Well, all the emissions are coming out of the smokestacks of these things while they're parked in the port, waiting to be loaded or unloaded or whatever. And people didn't like it. It made for toxic air contaminant. Didn't like it. So they passed all these treaties, and they found a way to remove the sulfur particulates, the sulfur contamination from the fuel. So they were burning low sulfur fuel. Well, as soon as they did that, the earth got hotter. What? What? We thought we were solving a problem. Yeah, you were solving a problem, which was sulfate emissions in ports where people live and breathe, right? Fine, do that. But you also removed sulfate emissions into the atmosphere. And sulfates in the atmosphere are reflective. And reflective things reflect sunlight back into space before it gets very deep into the earth. Into the Earth system. And so by blocking sunlight, because the sulfates from the smokestacks of the cargo ships was blocking some of the sunlight, that was a benefit. It reduced global heating. Who knew? So when they stopped burning fuels that contained sulfur and therefore reduced sulfate emissions, that was the plan. And that was a good plan. They caused, unexpectedly, global heating. And then people started screaming, put the sulfates back, put them back in the engines, put them back in the fuel because we're screwing up. We didn't know, put them back. And the ship operator's like, no, we're not doing that. Because if we put sulfates back, then we can't run our engines when we're in port. And we like running our engines in port because the alternative to running your engine in port to generate electricity and other forms of energy is that you have to hook up in port to electricity. So you can have electricity. If you're not going to run your engines, you have to hook up. You have to have hookups. So when the ship pulls in and it docks and they tie it off and they do all things, then they run a big extension cable. It might be this big around. Who knows how big it is? Into the ship so the ship can have electricity. And now the operator of the ship is buying electricity, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted to use their cheap fuels to generate electricity for use on the ship. They didn't want to buy electricity from the port, because that gave the port control over how much they charge for electricity. So they don't want to do that. That's why they got the sulfates out of the fuels for the cargo ships, so they wouldn't have to buy electricity from the port. They like it that way. And they're not going back. So we learned something. And then people came along and said, oh, then we have to artificially inject sulfates into the atmosphere. Who knew? And there are various schemes being proposed to do that. And you'd have to do a lot. I mean, if you really wanted to reflect a lot of sun back into space, and I'm going to talk about SRM here in a moment, you'd have to run jet tankers containing various forms of sulfate in tanks, and you have to spray sulfates into the atmosphere at altitude. You wouldn't do it at the ground level because that's where the people are. We're trying to keep people from breathing sulfates or having sulfates cause environmental damage. So we do it way up in the atmosphere where it's less likely. Well, I mean, eventually makes it down to the lower levels of the atmosphere, so it's not completely free of harms. But hey, you're trying to do the right thing. So you're spraying sulfates up in the atmosphere. It's reflective, helps reflect some of the radiation from the sun back out into space, helps to cool the earth. I'm going to talk more about SRM in a moment. SRM itself is absolutely evil. But I wanted to mention sulfates because sometimes people talk about sulfates specifically and that we have to inject sulfates into the atmosphere now artificially. Well, why would you not do that? Well, for one thing, it's going to cost you money. What are we talking about? We're talking about manufacturing, again, that word again, manufacturing specific types of airplanes, jets, to use as cargo. And their only job will be to load up with sulfates and fly to the top of the atmosphere and spew sulfates. So they just fly around the world, round and round and round. They're still using jet fuel, so we're still maintaining a dependency on fossil fuels. But now we're also creating a dependency for sulfates. Where is that going to be manufactured? Who's going to come up with that? So we're going to have to manufacture sulfates. We're still manufacturing jet fuels. We have to manufacture the jets. Then we have to fly them all around the planet. And once again, because this involves the whole planet now, day and night, you're going to have all these treaties with all these nations that are all involved in this. And you are reflecting sunlight back into space, so that's going to have some impact on anything that at the surface of the Earth uses sunlight, right? Like solar panels. What, you're going to make solar panels less efficient because you're reflecting sunlight out into space because of reasons? Some people may not like that. Also, we have these things called crops, plants, and what do? They just jump out of the ground. It's all magic. No, they use sunlight to convert resources into plant material, including the things we eat. So if you start blocking the sunlight, then the plants are getting less sunlight. And what does that do to crop yields? What does that do to certain types of crops at all? Maybe they can't grow at all where they used to grow. Peoples, nations that have agriculture further and further from the equator find themselves having shorter and shorter growing seasons anyway. So if you start blocking sunlight, then those places that are already kind of marginal don't have a long growing season, don't get a lot of sunlight anyway. Up near the Arctic Circle, what are we talking? Norway, Sweden, Germany, the UK, right? Most of Russia, parts of China, all of Japan. They're way up north. They have a short growing season and long winters. So if you start, blocking sunlight, they're not going to be happy with you. They're all going to have to sign on to these treaties to let this happen globally, that you're going to block sunlight. Do you think they're going to sign on with those treaties? No, they're not. So you can't do it. You might even start a war. And this gets to the topic of SRM, solar radiation management. It's a bigger topic because sulfate injections in the atmosphere is just one way to do SRM. You can also have mirrors, and you can have mirrors in space. Again, they're just great big mirrors reflecting sunlight back into space before it gets to Earth. But once again, yeah, sure, that cools the Earth a little bit, maybe enough. Who knows? We'll have to try it to find out, right? But it's blocking sunlight. So now all your solar panels are less efficient. All your plants and your crops are less efficient. Are people going to sign on for that? Oh, I don't know. Probably. Let's just say no. Let's just say no, they won't. And you can do it unilaterally because you're the United States and you have nuclear weapons and anybody who doesn't like it can go pound sand. Well, you could start the Third World War. Russia, China, they may not like what you're doing and they may tell you to stop. And you say, we can't stop because global heating. And they're all in denial. We don't believe in global heating, so stop what you're doing. And now you have a war. Or they'll shoot down your satellites, or they'll shoot down your cargo jets that are doing the sulfate injections. They'll shoot them down. You said you're not going to stop? Well, too bad. Now you're stopped. Because you couldn't get a global treaty. Because that's what you had to have. Other ways of doing solar radiation management. In addition to mirrors in space. Okay, I got to talk about mirrors in space before I move on. You have to manufacture them. That's more manufacturing facilities for mirrors in space. You're going to need millions of them. They're not going to stay in space forever. You're going to have to make new ones as the old ones come down. And then, dare I say it, you're going to have a space program just for mirrors in space. You're going to need millions of mirrors in space. You're going to have all these rocket ships, all these launch facilities that are launching rockets every single day, 2-3 times a day, to get mirrors in space and to keep mirrors in space because you're trying to cool the Earth because you couldn't do the other thing, which I'll get to at the end. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to manufacture these rockets? Who's going to maintain these rockets and maintain the launch facilities? Where's the fuel for the rocket come from? Are there any problems with burning that fuel to launch all these rockets? Are you making the problem worse by trying to solve it using rockets and manufacturing of solar mirrors and putting solar mirrors in space? Have you just shot yourself in the foot and made your problem worse? Well, you won't know until you try. And if you're desperate enough, you'll try. And who knows if people will even allow you to do it. It's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of what ifs. And maybe you could model it. Maybe you could do some science on it. But can you get everybody to agree? Can you get everybody to help pay for it? Can you get everybody to launch their own rockets and put their own mirrors in space? And, have some buy-in. That's a lot of ifs. You'd have to answer all that. And a pilot project where you launch a mirror into space. Yep, we could launch one mirror into space. Okay, well now rinse and repeat 1,000,000 times. And do that continuously for the foreseeable future. I'll get to something called termination shock in a minute. And then, I heard this today. Oh, if the problem is that all the sea ice is melting and making the Earth absorb more sunlight, because sea ice is reflective, right? Sea ice is reflective, and so if you have sea ice over the oceans, it protects the oceans from absorbing heat from the sun. So it reflects the sunlight back into space. So if the problem is that the sea ice is melting, which it is, well, then refreeze the oceans. And they'll say that. We have to refreeze the Arctic. Moving on. It's like, you just said something. Who's we, and who's going to pay for that? And how are you even going to do that? What is the actual technology? And so, we refreeze the Arctic. It's simple. Refreeze the Arctic. And that doesn't solve your problem. That just allows you to reflect more light into space. And then you have to be up there all the time refreezing the Arctic, because global heating didn't stop. Global heating didn't go away just because you decided to refreeze the Arctic. However you're doing that, it's huge. How is anybody refreezing the Arctic? This is insane. This is delusional. Oh, you're just you're just a Debbie Downer. You're just being deliberately difficult. No, I'm not. You do the math. You come up with the budget. You come up with the technology. What are we talking about? Diesel-powered ships, of course. Oh, if they're not diesel, then they're nuclear-powered. So now you want, what, 500 nuclear-powered ships in the Arctic refreezing the ice? That's what you're talking about. 500 of them, nuclear-powered, in the Arctic refreezing the goddamn ocean and making ice. You figure it out. It's your fucking proposal, not mine. I'm telling you it's not going to work. So I can do math. And then there's marine cloud brightening, which is sort of halfway in between all these other things. Marine cloud brightening is that you have, once again, special made ships. You've got probably hundreds of thousands of them. And what do? They go along the surface of the ocean, just going back and forth and back and forth, right? That's all they're doing, going back and forth and back and forth, burning diesel, bunker oil, whatever. And what are they doing? They're pumping up seawater, freezing it somehow, and then with some kind of a nozzle, shooting it way up into the sky to create clouds. Marine cloud brightening. You're enhancing the reflective properties of clouds over the water, which is brilliant, right? Because now you're not doing it over the whole world, you're just doing it over the water. And the water is a particular problem. Water is dark, and unlike ice, it doesn't reflect light, it absorbs it. So if you want to stop water from absorbing heat, you just put clouds over it. Clouds. Marine clouds. And we're going to make artificial marine clouds with ships that go along on the water and freeze the water and inject it high into the atmosphere where it forms clouds. Problem solved. That's it. Marine cloud brightening. We could do a pilot project. We could build a ship, special ship, $10 million ship, $100 million ship, build a special ship, fill it full of diesel, crude oil, whatever we're going to run it on. Maybe you have to run it on nuclear. Now it's a $200 million ship with a nuclear reactor at sea. But somehow we're going to have this ship, and then we're going to have this refrigeration using electricity from something. I don't know. Maybe we're running the whole thing on coal. We're going to have this ship, and then we're going to pull all this seawater. We're going to inject it into the atmosphere, and then we're never going to stop. We're never going to stop. Never. You can't stop. This is your solution. This is a forever project. Like you can never stop injecting sulfate aerosols into the atmosphere. And you can never stop freezing the Arctic with your special ships for freezing the Arctic. You can never stop. Because global heating didn't go away. Because you didn't solve that problem, did you? You're just pretending. Because you couldn't face it. You could talk about marine cloud brightening and freezing the Arctic and injecting sulfates into the upper atmosphere and repairing the aerosol layer. You can talk about all that stuff, and you can spend the money, and you can have the projects and write the grants and get the scientists and do the pilot project and write the papers about the project and publish the papers and present the papers to the governments and get the governments to recognize all your good work, and then you stop and you go home. You retire, whatever. It was just a job. And you proved the point. You could have a ship that could make clouds. And does anyone ever bother making the ship to make the clouds? They don't have to. That wasn't your promise. As a researcher and a scientist and an engineer, your promise was you were going to give it a try. And it worked. And then you present your findings to the governments, and they have to make it so. Not your responsibility. So they don't care. These people don't care. These are feel-good solutions. It's never going to happen. Because people don't like the idea of forever. And here's what happens if you start and then you change your mind. You start with these projects. You've got orbital mirrors. You've got mirrors. You've got a sulfate layer. You've got mirrors on the ground. You've got ice on the ground. You're making ice. It's reflective. Ice. Okay. And you've got marine cloud brightening. And you've got all the other SRMs. And you've got all the other carbon captures and all the other carbon removal projects and the big fans and carbon removal and bricks and building pyramids. You have all this stuff figured out. And then you stop. Why do you stop? Because you run out of money, or you run out of political will, or you run out of people, or you run out of energy, or you run out of manufacturing. You can't build the ships. You can't build the planes. You just run out. You can't keep going. You can't sustain it. It's like you're at war, and wars have to end. And you're on a war footing, and you're fighting climate change and global heating, and you're on a war footing. But it's a forever war because it never ends. And then you stop because you can't do it forever. Humans can't do things forever. We've never done things forever. We don't even do peace forever. Nothing. We've never done anything forever. Forever is a word, people. And as soon as you stop, then the sulfates come out of the atmosphere. The marine clouds evaporate. The ice that you've been making every year with your whatever melts. It just melts because global heating didn't stop. And so you didn't do it forever. And so the ice melts and the sulfates rain out and the marine clouds evaporate and the mirrors fall from space and the other mirrors and the everything else and the carbon capture stops and the carbon removal stops. You don't know what to do with the bricks. You got tired of making pyramids. You stop. You stop. You don't make the pyramids anymore. You stop. And then you get what's called termination shock because you decided to stop and global heating never went away. You're stuck with the global heating. You don't have your solution. Your solution disappears. And the heat that you've been saving up for the day, when your solution stops, when you terminate that project, all that heat comes roaring back. In a month, in a year, it doesn't matter. Nothing you can do to stop it. It just comes roaring back. And if then you panic and you say, oh my God, we must start refreezing the ice again. Well, now your situation's worse. If 500 ships froze enough ice to make a difference, now the global heating comes roaring back. Things are much hotter than they were. You're going to need not 500 ships, but 1,000. And if you were doing aerosol injections in the upper atmosphere to reflect sunlight, and then you stopped, and the heating came roaring back, you're going to have to go up there with 2 or 3 times as many airplanes and reflect 2 or 3 times as much sunlight to counteract what you just got because you stopped. This is called termination shock. Yeah, it's shocking, okay? You can never stop, but you will because you're human and you can't fight forever wars forever. This course is madness. It's insane. It's unhinged. You get it? It's so insane, we can't even start. We can't even start with the carbon capture and sequestration, or the direct air capture, or the decarbonizing industries, or the sulfate injections, or the SRM writ large, or the refreezing of the Arctic, or the marine cloud brightening. We can't even start. We can't even get it going because the termination shock, when we stop, which we must, is lethal. It's lethal. But the lethality is down the road, and I don't have to deal with it personally. And I feel great about my solar radiation management. And then after I'm dead and after I'm buried, then some other generation that stops doing it because they just can't do things forever. They can't do it forever. Forever is a word, people. Forever is a fucking word in the fucking English language that means forever. And because they stop, they all die. But when I started this project, I felt great. It's not my problem that those people all die in hothouse Earth. It's their fault for not having a vision to do something forever. Their fault. And that's why we have this conversation about solar radiation management and marine cloud brightening and refreezing the Arctic, whatever. That's why we have this conversation. Because we've lost our mind. We've lost our mind with fear and regret. All of the above allow the conversation to drift from what we need to do and allow us to keep on with business as usual in the hope of a miracle. And this is the conversation people have when they can't face what they know to be true. They can't face it. They can't face it. They accept the global heating. They accept the climate change. They accept that it's caused by carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels. They accept all these things. It's true. It's science. It's data. It's data driven. They're engineers. They're scientists. They're science communicators. They accept it. They understand it. They can't deny it. They won't deny it. They refuse to deny it. Denying it puts them in that camp with those pinheads over there who think the earth is flat. Okay? They're not going to be with those people. They're going to accept the science. They can't face it because they're human, because they have children and grandchildren, they have careers and they have communities and they have the hope for humanity and have the past and the future and everything that could be great and everything that could be better and humans in space and exploring the stars, and they can't give up on all that. They can't give up on all that. And the cognitive dissonance of knowing that all of that is possible, and eternal life and longevity and AI and our children on Mars and Mars colonies and the fact that all that is possible with all that we've done and all we could do coming to an end because of the hothouse Earth. They can't face it. They can't face it because they're good people. And they accept reality. They accept the goddamn science. They accept it. They accept what is happening. And then they lose their fucking mind. And I understand that. I explicitly understand that. Good people, faced with disaster, faced with the end of everything that was supposed to be wonderful, and they can't face it and they lose their mind. And I understand that. I understand that. Because the thing we have to do now, right now, March the 8th, the year 2026, the thing we have to do this afternoon, is stop burning fossil fuels. Full stop. Full stop. We must do that. I know it sounds stupid and insane and defeatist. We have to do it. Because we're not doing this other shit. And some of this other shit is just business as usual anyway. Or business as usual with treaties. Global fucking treaties. The only solution is to stop all consumption of fossil fuels. This will cause pain and suffering, but so will hothouse Earth. Hothouse Earth will cause extinction events for us, for other animals, and for plants, and for other forms of life. We will ruin, we may have already ruined this planet for human purposes. Oh, that's over the top. Oh, that's fear-mongering. That's some bullshit. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I'm not the only one saying it. I am not the only one saying it. Now, don't expect your CNN and your MS Now and everything else to tell you that we may have already screwed the pooch. Don't expect them to tell you that. But my people will tell you that. And then they'll trot out solar radiation management and marine cloud brightening and refreezing the Arctic. Forever projects. Forever. And forever is a word that has meaning, and it means forever. It doesn't mean until it's convenient to stop. It means forever. They want forever projects for humanity. For how long? Forever. Humans have been on this world as evolved Homo sapiens for 300,000 years. That's not very long, by the way. 300,000 years. Not even a million years. Not even half a million years. 300,000 years. We will be signing on to manage solar radiation forever. Not 3 years. Not 30 years. Not 30,000 years. Not 300,000 years. Forever. Let's throw out some numbers. 30 million years? 30 billion years? Forever? The Romans had no numbers. The ancient Romans had no numbers above 1,000,000. Because for Romans, being the sensible people they are, anything above 1,000,000 was infinity. Infinity. Forever. If we're going to do solar radiation management as a solution to hothouse Earth, and we don't involve leaving fossil fuels in the ground, then we're signing on to do that forever. More than 1,000,000. More than 1,000,000 years. Forever. It's not going to happen. It's deranged. It is insane. It is unworkable. And on some level, even bringing up these topics as a solution to global heating, even bringing these up as solutions is immoral. It's immoral. We have to stop burning fossil fuels with immediate effect right now. And I don't mean tomorrow. I mean today. We must do this. Will we do this? Nope. No, we will not. Will we do solar radiation management? Oh, and marine cloud brightening and refreezing the Arctic and sulfate injections and decarbonizing industries and direct air capture and carbon capture and sequestration and emission reductions? Will we do any of those things? No. No. We'll talk about them every day. We'll talk about them every day. We won't do them. No pilot projects, proof of concept. I'll do a paper, a grant. I'll do a model. Nor will we ever stop burning fossil fuels. Except we will. We will stop burning fossil fuels. And when will we? When we no longer can. We'll do it day and night, 24 hours a day, for all the reasons we know we have to. For the medicines and the children and the schools and the airplanes and the cargo ships and the manufacturing and everything else. All the ag and all the food and all the food processing and all the supermarkets and all the cars and all the jobs and all the commuting and all the everything else. Millions and millions of things that we have to do because we think we have to do it. Business as usual. It's good business. It's profitable. It's sacred. It's progress. It's gotten us where we are. It's got us to the moon. It's going to take us to Mars. Business as usual is the right kind of business. We're all going to do that forever until we can't. Until we can't. And when is it that we can't? Well, there's two ways in which we can't. One, all or most of us, a significant number of us, are dead. And why would that happen? Because of global heating. We make the earth uninhabitable. That word again, uninhabitable for human purposes. And how do people die from global heating? People die from global heating because there's no water. There's no food. There's no electricity. There's no cooling. And it's just too fucking hot. Their brains bake in their brain pan, and they drop down dead from a heat stroke. And there will be cities full of dead people because of heat stroke. There'll be countrysides full of dead people because of heat stroke. And when you're dead, you're not consuming fossil fuels. You're not driving. You're not flying. You're not going to your job. You're not going to the hospital. You're not going to school. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to the market. You're not going to the farms. You're not harvesting the crops. You're not moving the crops onto trucks. You're not sending the trucks to the warehouse. The warehouse isn't sending it to the store. Nothing's being manufactured. Nothing's being processed. Nothing's being moved. Nothing's being eaten because everyone's dead because of hothouse Earth. Another way that we might stop burning fossil fuels, short of that, although that is a thing, short of that, the Earth may simply become unsuitable for extracting fossil fuels. Or on the way to the Earth being unmanageable, we might have a big fucking war like we're having right now. And it's a big enough war, blow up enough cities, blow up enough people, blow up enough manufacturing, blow up enough fossil fuel extraction facilities and infrastructure like pipelines, pump jacks, refineries, crude oil tankers, all that stuff. Blow it up, have a big war, have a big fight, have a big riot, blow it all up, then you can't. Then it just stays in the ground. Or we may get so fouled up with heat and just failure to function that we can't maintain the electric grid. We can't maintain the pipelines. We can't maintain the ships that go to sea. It just becomes too difficult for people to do the things, to make the things happen. And again, the fossil fuels end up being stuck in the ground. So there are various ways we could stumble like drunkards into a situation where we stop burning fossil fuels. Now, that won't be today, although the war in Iran is somewhat hopeful. Yes, somewhat. Am I hearing? Wait, what's this? They're fighting over oil in the Middle East? What? Could you say that again a little louder? We're fighting over oil in the Middle East? What? Where? The Middle East? Oh, wait. We're fighting Iran over oil? Huh. Wow. Am I hearing correctly? You stupid chimps. Fucking idiots. That's right. You're fighting over oil. Well, what can I say to that? Hell yeah, you do that. You do that. You fight over the oil, please. Nuclear weapons? Yes, absolutely. You fight over the oil. I want every oil tanker afloat on the bottom of the fucking sea, okay? That's a good start. What do you call all the oil tankers on the bottom of the Atlantic? A good start, right? Blow up the pipelines, set fire to all the tanks full of oil. Yes, please. Tomorrow, this afternoon, if you can manage it. Blow up Carg Island, blow up all the other refineries, everything else. Just set fire to it. Missiles, nukes, riots, drones, I don't even care. What did I hear? Did I hear an explosion? Oh, yes, please, more of that. Because that's how you stop burning fossil fuels, the bitches. That's right. That's how you stop burning fossil fuels. And then, if we do enough of that, and we're successful at it, and we don't stop doing that, and we keep doing that until it's done, well, then we don't need emissions reductions, and we don't need carbon capture and sequestration or direct air capture. We wouldn't need to decarbonize our industries. There'd be no industries. We wouldn't have to do sulfate injections and build all those planes. We wouldn't have to do solar radiation management, whatever the fuck that turns out to be. We don't have to refreeze the fucking Arctic either, and we don't have to do marine cloud brightening or any of the other 50 things I didn't mention in the list. We'd be done, wouldn't we? Because we did the thing. We stopped burning fossil fuels. There you go. Are we going to do that? Meh, I don't know. We might. We might blow up all the oil processing plants in the world. We might do that. I doubt it. We would need more of a run-up than that. I don't think Donald Trump has the patience or the focus. He's got the attention span of a goldfish, right? And so he'll come up with something else to distract us all from the Epstein files, and he'll probably invade Iran, and he'll take their oil, and he'll sell it himself, and he'll put the money in his pocket like he did with the Venezuelan oil, which went into a offshore bank account with his name on it. Fine, I don't care who gets the money. I'm not getting the money. I would never get the money, so it's not going to do me any good that he stole the money. After he stole the oil, he'll steal the Iranian oil, and then he'll steal the money from them. Who cares? I don't care. That's not the problem. Leave it in the ground. Nobody should get rich from that stuff because of hothouse Earth. We're going to kill ourselves. Or we're going to have a big war and we're going to blow everybody up and we're going to leave it in the ground. That's a possibility. We don't know how to save ourselves from this. We're not strong enough. We're not smart enough. I don't think we're smart enough. I don't think these chimps are smart enough to do it. I don't think they can figure it out. All these scientists, all these engineers, well, they want solar radiation management. They're going to refreeze the Arctic. That's what we're dealing with? Well, then I don't think we know what we're doing. All right, then we don't know how to do this. So, do what we do best. Blow shit up. Bomb it. Nuke it. Set it on fire. Kill everyone who's anywhere near to it. Find all the experts. Line them all up. Throw them in concentration camps. They can't be drilling oil. They can't be running pipelines. They can't be doing anything else. They're all whatever they are. They're the enemy. They're the something. They're the Visigoths. They're troublesome, problematic. They're the wrong species. They're the wrong political party. They're the wrong religion. Round them up. Throw them behind bars. No more oil. And just leave it in the ground. Whatever it takes. Do it. Prove to me that you can do it. Can't, of course. They can't do it. But, we'll see. Maybe they do it on accident. Was that I hear? War in the Middle East. They're blowing up what? How many bombs a day? Yeah, okay, well. Suddenly I'm hopeful. Just when I thought that things couldn't get any darker, all of a sudden, do I hear bombs? Boots on the ground? Where? Whose boots? When? This afternoon? That sounds perfect. That sounds perfect. Boots on the ground. That's just what we need. I'm done. Oh, I am so done. I am so done on so many levels. I am so done. For those in the know, read my book. It was 100 days. It's a user's manual for the humanoids. What are you going to do on the day after they leave it in the ground? Yeah, that's a topic, folks. You got 100 days to figure that out. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when they leave it in the ground? Yeah, that's a thing. I mean, it should be a thing. Otherwise, it's solar radiation management, right? And termination shock. Yeah, well, you don't want to be there for that. Trust me, you don't want to be around for that when that goes down. So, buy the book. Link in the description, available on Amazon. And I will go back to the description in this video, and I will add my link to my other video where I discuss something related to all of this. The reading, that's right, where I was reading from this and the important parts, which is the run-up to, the end of the world. Isn't that interesting? The run-up, early days to the end of the world. I think you should be interested in that. I will link the video. You can enjoy that as an audiobook. More on that to come. And if you want to hear the audiobook version of this, you may want to account on Audible. All right, I'm done. So done. I love you. I'm trying to take care of you. I'm trying to help you understand. And I don't want you to die. Don't die.